Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Inlay Terms. I am your host, Payman Ascari, and today we have a fantastic guest, Mr. Michael Adamson. Michael, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Payman. I'm honored to be here.
It's going to be an interesting episode. Like most of them, you're going to be running circles around me. You're sort of the subject matter expert on this topic. Um, I guess before we get to that, could you maybe just tell the audience as little or as much as you're comfortable about yourself?
Uh, yeah, sure. I'm an artist. I'm a father. I live in Toronto. Um, and I studied at school in the time of postmodernism. And so when I say I'm an artist, a painter, it's also kind of like being a cultural theorist. And there was a division of art that was called conceptual art, and it didn't involve painting or photography. It involved ideas, applying critical theory to ideas. It got a bit boring, and people started applying other forms of thinking to critical thinking. It eventually posited that the end of postmodern thinking would arrive, and then it began to sketch out what might ideas look like after postmodernism. And so that's one of my specialty areas of study, and my career is involved in making the paintings and the rhetoric that is part of this postmodern world. And that is by accident how I got into studying finance in a way.
Okay, so before applying that to to finance, postmodernism
Yes.
applied to finance, critical analysis, I am going to show my ignorance. If I was like an 8-year-old and you wanted to explain postmodernism to them, would it literally just be you're applying critical thinking to ideas? Is that postmodernism?
Um, for the week, for this month, for this year, the 8-year-old will be in charge of the household. Go. Talk to them in 1 year. See what happened. That is postmodernism. If you're saying it to an 8-year-old. So what an 8-year-old would run a household like, who knows? But it would be very different, presumably, to how an adult would run it. That's postmodernism in a nutshell. It's the difference between purposeful order and purposeful disorder.
So like modernism would be modernity. Modernism was traditions passed down. This is how what works. Let's do it. Postmodernism is like all bets are off. Do whatever you want.
Postmodernism is a part of modernism. It's a division, it's a chapter within modernism. It challenges traditionalism and ancient society, modernity. So modernity challenges ancient, traditional. Postmodernism is part of modernism. And it's sort of like a very radical experiment. Like, okay, so we're going to challenge this idea of the modern nuclear family. Okay, put the kids in charge. That's very postmodern. And then metamodern would be, okay, there was a couple cool things that happened when the kids were in charge. We have run into some financial difficulties because the kids didn't have jobs, so they were unable to pay the bills. So the mortgage, so now they're homeless. So now they have to not be homeless. So after a year of an 8-year-old running a household, it would be a disaster, right? Probably. And so then the idea of what comes after postmodernism, how would you recover your life after living in a homeless encampment in a world-class city in the age of information democracy and to some extent unlimited credit, because you'll get credited a certain amount until that's about as much as they could get out of you, and that's everybody. And that's what financing comes into it. So I've strayed off a little bit there, but postmodernism is a challenge to reason as a conceptual method. So instead of using reason, you use irrational concepts. If you were generously, it's to test the strength of reason. But
It's funny you explaining it that way. It makes me realize why everything is falling apart. um, okay, so some housekeeping. Good morning, Sue. Good morning, Kirk. Good morning, Gilbert. Anybody watching, if you can share the room, we'd all appreciate it. We want to get Michael's story out there. Michael, I'm going to hand it over to you. You explain what's going on with money. Pick up anywhere you want. East India Trading Company, all wars are banker wars. We need to go back to physical gold. So why don't you tell us what's going on before we get to how to fix it?
Amazing.
No pressure.
We just have to reorient the purpose of money. So currently, the purpose of money is a vehicle with which to create debt. We have to look at money as a tool to create abundance in a conceptual nutshell.
Okay.
And it's a linguistic thing, so it kind of invites you to challenge the different aspects of that statement.
Sorry, I thought you were going to keep going. If you want me to jump in, the
whole thing is based on step-by-step incredulous statements that I'm going to make reasonable. So yeah, we use debt as well. We use money as a mechanism to create debt, and debt is a mechanism to create control. If what we experience is poorly administered or poorly justified control, one tool to remove is debt, and that would be a simple reframing of finance and money to create abundance. Because you can have a conceptual purpose that's from anywhere on the spectrum, for any approach, technology. Anybody can use any tool for any purpose. So you could use money to create abundance. How would you define abundance? And it's a term that has a kind of specific meaning in many ways that would probably be very elusive because it's a very rarefied niche understanding. What's your understanding right now in this context, if I could just calibrate? When I say abundance, what does that make you think
of? Wheat fields.
Right? Yeah, okay. So something agrarian, something that's plentiful, that's huge, vast abundance, right? There's a bigness, right? Yeah. That is a great way to think of it. So think of the cornucopia, that horn that's on the table that's full of stuff. Imagine that as a field of wheat. Imagine just a field of cornucopias. So then that's the sort of quantum jump vision of abundance in a fuller spectrum. But it could also be a vast array of oil fields, of processing plants, of farms, of low footprint, semi-rural housing developments. It could be a whole bunch of things that represent abundance. It could be the ledgers at a bank with all the money piling up from exchange. Abundance can be it's abundantly inclusive abundance. Yeah, and so it's kind of like the polar to debt. That's how you'd kill debt, is through abundance. And then a common problem people have with that would be inflation. But inflation is actually created by debt. Yeah.
Can I jump in?
Yes, please.
Let's even take it a step back.
Yes.
I'm going to ask a question. I'll answer it myself. What is money? So, like, money is a means of a transaction. Like, if we were in jail, cigarettes would be money. And I don't mean that in a technical term because, I know there's store of wealth, scarcity and stuff like that. But like right now, when we say money, we're talking about, let's assume you live in a community, a village, you're farming agrarian village. It's just so that you can sell wheat to the baker and barter is, I guess wheat would be a form of money. Like, what is money to you?
How are you going to store up your wheat? And let's say you don't just want to have wheat, you want to have something of everything. Let's say you have lots of ambitions to be a very acquisitive person, and you have a huge building, and you like to fill it with 10 of everything. Well, you need money to do that. And before you need money to do that to facilitate those transactions, because you won't be able to trade with each person for all those things using your cow or your wheat. Like, money is a vehicle with which we conduct exchange, and it's a vehicle that we conduct exchange in a uniform, organized way that's generally nationally. We don't use gold as money. We use paper money or currency, CAD, USD, whatever it is on the computer, money. And I would describe it, there's a difference between currency and money. Money is sort of what we use. Currency could be anything. It could be any, as you say, it could be any medium of exchange. But the general purpose of money is that it regulates exchange. And why would a nation state want to regulate exchange? Because exchange is so fundamental to daily life, commerce, it would be like unregulating citizenship. So for the exact same reasons that you would say open borders are a bad idea, so would you say an international currency is a bad idea?
Can you explain that further? The international currency, why is that a bad idea?
Okay, why are open borders a bad idea?
People who are not like you come here, different customs. I don't know. People who are more poor come here, and then your living standards fall.
Sure, let's go to the first part. People who are not like you come into the area and have equal influence. Okay, so people who want to use money to do things that you don't approve of can have equal footing in your influence if they have equal access to your finance.
Okay, no, that makes sense. The reason I asked you what is money, my dad used to live in a farm, and we went to the butcher. He'd take a tally stick. It's just a stick, and the butcher would put a notch. At the end of the year, they would settle the debts in barter. And now can you walk the audience through, you mentioned that money should be creating abundance, but not debt. How does money create debt? Assume you're talking to, like, again, a 10-year-old.
Well, I'd have to be thinking way upstream if I got all the way to a 10-year-old, but like, let's keep it for us like 2, okay, or just newborn. Okay, it seems to me that debt is intertwined with how we use money because of the way money is regulated. We don't regulate our money. Our money is regulated externally by comparative valuation by organizations that we do not control. This would be the Bank for International Settlements, would be the regulatory body, and the IMF would be the policy body. And it gets even more interesting because NATO becomes the enforcement body. And so it's a whole, when you're looking at how finance is enforced, what you're looking at is globalization. And, if you follow the media in this direction, globalization is to some extent fading, collapsed, broken, dead, whatever. And a new transactional commerce method, system, psychology is becoming worldwide and globalized. And so there's a new kid in town, and it has to do with how the money is being distributed. But right now, it's kind of the Wild West. You remember the crypto craze, and the crypto craze may still be something that people don't remember. It may be something that people are in because it's like ever growing. The alternatives and parallels. And it's in that soup of central banking, cryptocurrency, gold, fiat, all these things that you can throw a few other ingredients in, mix it up postmodern style, and then filter it out to get an idealized, non-cynical, authentic version of how you could use money for abundance. And so it's like an art project. It's like a conceptual art project. Takes an hour to listen to, and you need charts and things, but we're cutting through all that with a simple discussion. And so we should backtrack, and we should keep checking the points as they come up. So the way we use money is to prove that we can borrow more money. So we say, we have this much, let's borrow some more. So our goal of acquiring capital is to earn more credit, as opposed to use that capital. Like, don't spend your money, invest it. It's built into our psyche. It's built into our compensation programs, pensions, all that stuff. It's built in debt. So basically you can use money for something else, which would be to create abundance, to create credit. And in the debt system, everything funnels into a very small group of people at an ever accelerating rate, where if you had 10 million 10 years ago, you might have 100 million today. And you'd look at your interest that you're making on that, and it would be, I don't even know, $20,000 this week. These are huge numbers to everybody. So I think the wealth acceleration concentration is very obvious to everybody, but no one has ever thought of how to remedy it in the new philosophy, because the new philosophy hasn't got to economics yet. It has the understanding of the collapse. Peter Zeihan is a good economist to understand that, political strategist and economist. And then other than that, there is no Marx of the 21st century economics. There's no Keynes. There are no economic theorists of the new era. It's lost in a soup of obsolete 20th and 19th century ideologies, approaches, they call them, and then the new crypto stuff that defies logic and reason, because it's a financial psychopathic machine. It's not about building a nation. It's about profit. So it has no moral obligation, whereas a money should be attached to a state with a moral direction. And then so doing that, if those are the fields that you're trying to fill, there's a methodology that you would do. Yeah, and that's sort of what I'm working with. Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
Let me ask some probing questions. Again, I'm not as well versed as you. So, like social credit, where they try to make up for the the lack of money because of all the loans. Is that what you're advocating for? Is that what you support?
That would be a financial policy of an ideology that is in itself a financial mechanism. The financial mechanism is globalization. The policy within that is socialism, and what that thing is a division of socialist economy. So that's a type of debt-based banking that includes issuing debt to nations through free credit to citizens. And that means that the nation has to liquidate its resource assets, which is the ultimate objective of globalist banking, is to make each country debt full so that it has to reallocate ownership or control of valuable resources.
Okay, that's an interesting perspective, way of looking at it, and I appreciate that. What about? I'm noticing there's a lot of buzz around, Nazi Germany, how they just printed money and everything worked out, and Napoleon, Alexander Hamilton, this whole national bank where you're just giving, they call it cheap credit. Is that what's your view on that?
Before we had international trade, to the degree that we had in the 1880s and the 1950s. Before we had shipping container and globalization, economic theories tended to deal with 18th century issues. But if the whole idea is using gold to capture crowns, you use your gold to get a golden crown, because the crown you can make with gold is worthless. You have to get the real crown. So you use gold to get the crown, and blah, blah, blah. That's the game for the hundreds of years. In the game from the 1700s, the Napoleonic era, the system was fairly simple, fairly similar in that it involved giving credit to both sides, creating debt scenarios that were burdenous to the point where you had to get imperial to pay your debts. Once you got imperial, you got into the Wild West of conflict that would lead to war in the home that was doubly financed. And then basically, when blood runs in the street, you buy the property, which we see happening in Toronto now. The blood's running in the street, theoretically, in the linguistics. So the property values are going down, only in certain areas. And land is really important. And that's sort of like part of the basis of my theory, is just how important land is. So if you think about Blackstone as a sort of latter-day Fourth Reich, so you're talking about nationalizing the economy.
You talking about BlackRock?
Blackstone, BlackRock.
Is there another Blackstone?
Yeah, so Blackstone used to be with BlackRock, and they had conflict of interest because BlackRock can't do infrastructural governance financing and private sector real estate and roofing material and HVAC investment. That would be a conflict of interest. So they cut it in half. Blackstone does all the rental capture. So they'll organize financing so that certain areas you just can't get credit for. So certain areas, the value will go down, making it cheaper. So they buy it en masse and they turn it into rental. And then if you can't have up to grade thermometers and all this stuff, you can't be a landlord. And if they own the manufacturers, they make sure that their divisions of real estate get the equipment cheaper. Private landowners don't get the equipment cheaper, thereby getting put out of the game. It's a classic methodology, but they're operating here all over North America doing that real estate thing. And BlackRock is working with the federal government, with the infrastructure bank. So everything over a certain amount is big money, infrastructure money, a highway, big stuff, right? Small stuff, private banks. Big stuff, the global hedge funds. And that's merchant banking, infrastructure banking. And that is the mechanism by which the policy of globalization, the Fourth Reich, as you were, what Hitler and all these people were trying to do, analyzed as a worldwide application immediately following the Second World War, and then applied, was basically an echo of that whole system, globalization. And that is what we have experienced, is a kind of a user-friendly type of fascism. I don't know what you want to call globalization, but basically it's come to an end point where recently there was things that happened that a lot of people were like, what the heck? Soldiers in the street fighting freedom fighters with trucker mandates and masks and forced injections and Nuremberg and testing. People kind of got tripped out, and they've all been conditioned to hate the Nazis. So the link with that forced injection and the mandated medical experiments of, Auschwitz, that was, you couldn't resist that linkage psychologically. So they kind of put that away. But the whole thing, and so basically you have to sort of do something to intervene with the mechanism of global finance affecting national policy. And you see how neatly that has been associated with very dubious enterprises. Nationalism, nationalized banks. It's always associated with something that's just horrible, when in reality, a nationalized bank would be what you need to avert a globalist version of that.
So, yeah, I see where you're going with that. Like a lot of people support Alexander Hamilton's proposal as opposed to Thomas Jefferson's opposition of it. And what you're basically saying is, look, if you're going to have a bank, you would rather have it be national, where you have local or at least national control over it. You can't have it be global. And right now, it's global. That's what you're saying.
The premise, I think now that it's this old and long, I think we can say the premise of it, imposing a one world cultural condition to facilitate a one world trading system, commercial system, it's not reasonable. And so if you're dealing with unreasonable mandates in governance, you're dealing with unsustainable models. And I think that in the 20th century, every side of the political spectrum, every aspect of the political spectrum came to an understanding that it had reached an end game. And that was partially postmodernism bringing everybody down, but it was also postmodernism pointing out that there was an inherent flaw in the approach. And in postmodernism, like in romanticism in the 1700s, in modernity, or enlightenment rather, modernity, enlightenment, something did emerge that would liberate us, and it's abstraction. You learn to see the world in ever-increasingly abstract terms, to understand the nature of the complexity, and then from that, dial in and out with resolution and what you can focus on. So one thing that comes to, if you dial out far enough, everything is economic policy. What's it about? What are the mandates of lending money? State capture. So if global finance is all about getting nation states under control of one perspective, what is that perspective? Sure, that's important. What's the mechanism of it? Is it humane? Is it tyrannical? So we see it's a kind of a somewhat oscillates between ultra virtual, giving people reparations, to ultra tyrannical. We're going to liquidate your house to give these people reparations, right? So it oscillates. So it's kind of, it wouldn't be, if it was a person, and it has been described as this, if it was a person, it would be unwell, to put it mildly, right? The system we have. And so how would you make something that is unwell? How would you make that well? And one thing you would have to do if you just found somebody on the street living unwell, you'd have to secure their financial situation, give them a little bank card. They need to have a little bit of money so they can interact with the world on a daily basis. Then they need to have shelter. They need shelter and food and cleaning. They need all that, and counseling and all that. But they need money as part of it. So we have to have money for the nation. And I think that no one has ever looked at, I know that no one has ever looked at money as a ameliorative device for a total for a total social collapse. No one's ever thought of money as a tool to heal with. And this is a pretty key factor to that pivot. It's not a tool to indebt or enslave. It's a tool to heal through abundance. And then it's this process of explaining how what it is you're healing and how abundance facilitates that healing.
So are we talking about like a state sovereign bank that just prints money? Is that part of abundance?
Well, money is a pretty small potato in the game of economics. And economics is a pretty small potato in the game of governance. To govern, you have to have something to govern. And it has to be well made. It has to be durable. It has to service the people. It has to be authentic and legitimate. It has to work. That's good governance. So whether it's a policy, whether it's a bridge, whether it's a school, and then so if you're always bumming money off someone, you're not working very well. If you're always applying to grants, your project's not working that great, because we live in a world of money, and you have to integrate your reality in with money, the exchange on the street level, not the big, you don't have to invest money and make money and all this big finance money. You have to spend money at the shop, and the money is part of our normalizing. It's part of the civilizing process. It's better to, it's a symbolic thing as well as it's a pragmatic thing. Money is a very complicated thing. It's almost like it's magic. In fact, compound interest has been called magic. And so I would call that black magic. So it's not magic that's designed to help people. But money is a magical concept. Like every concept is magical. Fire is magical. Like everything we think of and learn how to do and replicate, share with people. So money is really important. And that's what some ideologies don't like. And even some faiths have this kind of a view of money. But really, you have to be holistic. And this is where ancient, traditional, modern, postmodern all gels together in this view of metamodernism. So if you're looking at finance from a metamodern critique, you say, well, how could it answer all those problems without falling into all those pitfalls? So that is sort of the challenge. And really with ideas, it's not nearly as difficult as you think to get harmony. And then with the internet and the technology that we have today, the quantum technology that we have today. So there's models of how you can achieve this. So basically you would create do you want to hear about how you would do it technically in a model?
Sure.
You have to create abundance. So a hospital can't cost 500 million a year. It has to make 500 million a year. But the condition is higher quality, better access, higher quality services, better access, lower costs, no cost, because we come from a socialized medical system. So in Canada anyway, the only way you're going to get mass purchase of any economic reform is if you continue to give socialized healthcare. But you do it socialized 2.0, where it's quite functional. It's not a money drain, and it's not a graft meets the most naive charity people, and the most naive people on earth being exploited by the most graftful people on earth. And that's your public health, right? So you kind of firewall the nice people away from the grafters you can't make money lending money to hospitals. You can't make money selling stuff to hospitals. To some extent, you can't facilitate a loan for $100 million to buy $10 million worth of MRIs that only cost $1 million to make. That graft has to be algorithmically sorted, right? So that we can have a high functioning medical establishment that serves our small population of 30, 40 million people well, efficiently, without making them travel hundreds of kilometers for basic stuff in the modern world. But that has to be funded somehow. And so if you have 4 acres dedicated to your health plan, you actually have 40 acres because you've got 10 acres below, or 5 acres below and 5 acres above. So if you just begin to think vertically, so then if your challenge is then to add 3 modules to your basic hospital, one easy one would be, just in general, would be an educational facility. What we'll be training people in, that comes later. An educational facility, why not a high value electronic medical device facility? So like an MRI factory. And then you have, you got your hospital, you got your school, you got your factory. Then I would say, because hospitals are near people and people eat food, and hospitals deal with people who don't eat properly, and that's why they're in the hospital a lot, we should probably have nutrition. So a 4th quadrant would be a nutritional complex, which would create protein, not in a laboratory. It would grow fish or whatever, have some exchange, whatever, for local farmers for beef, generate protein, it would grow vegetables, it would package vegetables, The MRI factory also would be creating the machinery to package and distribute, and vending machines, the food that was produced. MRIs only cost about 85 to 100 grand to make, and they cost between 850 and 1.5 million. So there's a huge markup on MRIs, and there's a massive market for them globally. And the Canadian health sector gets looted buying these things, or scam-oled with the medical donations to buy these expensive things. So that whole racket can be completely disabled using a banking methodology, an algorithm, as it were. And so basically your food production, not only does it offset and lower your healthcare costs regionally, it generates a certain amount of money, a couple $1 million a year after costs. The MRI factory obviously generates 20, 50 $million a year, whatever. Your school generates whatever, a couple $1 million, and your operating procedure cost of the hospital is 10 $million or whatever. So basically your hospital has been funded by the modules you've attached to it. And those modules are all built mindfully, not to injure the socioeconomic fabric of Canada, but to assist it and build it. Not to assist and build the socioeconomic fabric of other countries or whatever, but focused on the terrible bogeyman of peace and prosperity, nationalism, national interests. So the idea of creating health for national health, and you can even call it Instituten for National Health, and if you really want to terrify crazy people, because there is absolutely no overlap in reality between quantum nationalism and what we knew of ethno-nationalism. There's no relationship, and it's so the idea of a national bank obviously suffers, that it has the problem that it's servicing a nation. However, the idea that we would service a nation isn't such a bad idea. And there's all sorts of buy-ins, as well as, so that's one module. And I'd love to hear your reactions to that. There's dozens of modules I've designed, and they all yield a small profit. And that small profit all adds up to abundance, plus it doesn't cost us anything because they're all money making. And they add to fabrics. But there's dozens of challenges to these ideas. Like, what about local grocers? What about local MRI producers? Yes, there's all these issues. There's answers for it. And I've thought of many of them because I have talked to lots of people about it and heard lots of questions. But tell me, you must have some questions or critiques now.
Yeah, I was just, I always like to simplify things. So some of the things that you're proposing, one is the state, the government should invest. So that was an investment that you were talking about, not just expense. And second, it should be invested locally, which kind of ties into this whole tariff war. I guess at the end, you also mentioned that is the government getting involved in the manufacturing space, or would they just purchase from local manufacturers? Well, I missed that.
So how that would work. So the bank, which I call, and it's a bit confusing because a land bank isn't exactly what I'm saying. Officially, a land bank is something else. But what I call my thing is the Canadian National Land Bank for different reasons, okay? And basically, it creates an algorithm using the Crown land. A small portion of the Crown land, 4.5%, is dedicated to being nominalized in an algorithm. That algorithm does its magic and creates a $1 quadrillion fund. So BlackRock has 37 trillion. That's just a little bit less than a quadrillion because it's just a few zeros, right? Or 1 0, actually. So it's just $1 quadrillion. Now, in that, there is money that would be used to give to private contractors to build a bridge. But you only get the contract if you group up with a team that has been provided for you by the land bank on a bank of, well, we have this greenhouse manufacturer that will build something on your highway strip with this trucking firm and this oil field nearby. We have a quadrant already set up. You can pick it off the menu. So you and I, we could get together. We could say 100 of our buddies, we have this much money. We want in on a land bank project. They say, okay, you guys got all the qualifications. You're going to do. You pick menu item A, B, C, D, E. This provider, this provider, this provider, or a provider you like that is certified in the whole blah 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 system. So it's highly regulated, right? Then the bridge is built. There's a big old greenhouse. There's some kind of third and fourth quadrant industrial thing. It's all making money. You don't have to pay your money back, your debt, because the thing's making money. So you're scot-free for that infrastructure loan you got because you invested it in a way that it worked. You've been paid your salary for a couple of years while it gets going. If you're on the board or in the whatever, you could be part of the salary process forever. It's your bridge, greenhouse, you're the executive or whatever. There's just infinite. It accommodates everybody's normative role and expectation for an upwardly mobile, democratic open market investment that uses fiat, that uses all the traditions of the modern economy. It's just it's firewalled. No foreign companies can come in to purchase any of the investment dollars. And there's no reason that a Spanish company needs to loan you money to build a bridge. So they can't. We'll loan you the money. And bing bong boom. Yeah.
I think I understand better now. So, for example, the government of Canada, they allocate 100,000 acres of crown land, and they say, we want somebody to come build a railroad. We want 20,000 units. We want a hospital. We want a school. We want a manufacturing plant.
Land is just algorithmic. The land is just algorithmic. And yeah, if you wanted a train line, yeah, sure, crown land would be, but you wouldn't be selling it. Like it wouldn't, if a CN division wanted to create a new train line, you wouldn't be selling them the crown land. It would be on crown land. You're using the crown land to let you and I create a new CN where we build a train line. But there's conditions. That train line has to do a whole bunch of things. It has to pay for itself, has to service the community in a number of ways, has to be profitable. If we fail, that's fine. It fails. There's 1,000 projects simultaneously happening across the country, basically creating this hyper-industrial development. But no foreign money, because no money is going to leak out. And no one is going to dictate, you can't do that here, you can't do this here, this isn't part of Paris Accords or all this. Where you run into a reservation issue, that's what they invented 90 degrees for. Just move the train track 90 degrees until there's no problem, and then move it 90 degrees again.
So you're from Toronto. You guys have the 407. The 407 highway is it was or is a private highway, correct?
Yeah, I think Spanish now. Who knows? I mean, I don't even know who owns it. But yeah, it's privatized, and you have to pay. The Canadian citizens have to pay on a road in Canada, and the money goes abroad. It's feudalism. It's globalization. It's globalist fascism. It's nuts.
Okay, but
you could just walk with that thing in your bikini, and it would be cool, bro. But
okay, what about this? The government of Canada, they take crown land and they say, we want a 10-kilometer tunnel underneath this crown land. You can build it. You can, for 30 years, you can make a profit off of the tolls. And then after that, it comes back to we the people, and then we'll finance it. Is that sort of what you're saying?
No, you and I have an idea to make a highway. We go on the land bank menu and we go highway. And we look on the map and go eligible. Yeah, it's an eligible zone where we could build a highway if we make sure there's a school, a hospital, and a 10,000 person thing. We can build 80-mile section of the highway, 80-kilometer section of the highway. And they'll give us the money. So the land bank gives you and me the money. We invest it. We have to prove that we could do it. If you're qualified to do this kind of thing, then you invest the money, you hire the approved contractors, regional, local, international, if it has to be, because there's a pool, right? If you can't get someone local to do it, to do a regular submarine factory. If we have to hire a Dutch guy, big deal, right? Like, so big deal. We make a submarine industry. Instead of spending $40 million on submarines that we can't service, we make $400 billion selling and using submarines. Not military, civilian, but we can make. Yeah.
The the reason I keep asking these questions, what you're proposing is not that radical. I'm guessing they used to do this in the 60s, this whole mixed economy, investing in the growth of the nation. But
No, it's
everything
never
just kind of,
been. It's no. We've never been. We've always been pegged to uh, multi-party valuation of our currency. We've never. No nation on earth has ever been able to determine the value of its currency. It's never happened. In the olden day, no, like there was methods of exchange. So your money changer they'd have the racket, and that's what it is. If you show up with a Florentine and you want to use it in Paraguay, I don't know why it's Italy's in Paraguay back then, but when they do it, it's a money changer going to tell you that the Paraguayan thing is worth this in Florentines, and here you go. And that is what I'm saying is you cannot have that mechanism in any way affecting the value of Canadian property, Canadian assets, Canadian anything. You can't have any third party mediator of our valuation. That has to be a fully internalized valuation. And luckily we have the land that you can make an algorithm with in a safe way, because the first tranche is only 4.5%, which means that you could do it 10 times before you broke anything. And if you can't do it, I mean, it's immensely simple what I'm proposing, right? And there will be obviously things that don't work out as normal, but in general, the process of eliminating 30-40% of the value of our dollar from leaking into the global finance market annually, we should be richer and richer. We're building a nation. Why aren't we richer? We've been building it for 100 years. Why aren't we super rich? We're super poor. This is crazy. Why? That's nuts. And if you compare us to our ancestors, we're very rich, okay? Like I understand we have an incredible standard of living, but you can have super high quality socialist education and health. Yes, sir.
I would say, yeah, I get it. We have smartphones now, but I look at land like ancestors back in the like the I don't know late 1800s. They were farming like 200 acres. Now you got a guy living in a studio apartment. I'd say that we're more poor.
Um, um, well, the average worker dead by 40 up until 1800. The worker. Now that would be the vast majority of people. There would be a small middle class, but the civil service wasn't that advanced, and neither was the mercantile class in 1700, 1600. So you have masses of incredibly poor people that would die at 40, 45 max. You've got a limited feudal aristocracy that would live till 50 or 60. And like that's why when people are regressive nationalists, which is a flavor you should become aware of, it's a brand of cigarette that you'll smell, the regressive nationalist. And it always posits nostalgic views of times that were brutal and inhumane. Someone who's a human rights advocate would never fly a Union Jack. Why? Especially in Canada. Well, for the one simple reason of the British home children. 250,000 miners taken from England, sent to be agrarian slaves from 1860 to 1950 in Canada. I mean, this is a massive mark on the integrity of the colonial enterprise. And the fact that we don't know about this, and we know about the residential schools and Christopher Columbus and all that, and the fact that we don't know about how we wouldn't have farming in Canada. Like this idea of a family farm in Canada is a total, I hate to say it, is a completely inaccurate mythos. You have industrial farmers that came from the Ukraine in the 1940s as part of the Galician migration. These were SS sympathetic Ukrainians. They make up the vast majority of Saskatchewan industrial farming base, the legacy cohort from that group. And then the British people that went out there, if your kids and your wife died in transit from Ireland or died in Ireland and you managed to be a migrant and get here and all that, and you managed to find a wife and maybe have a kid or one or two survived the journey from Ireland to Saskatchewan, you need labor, and they provided labor. for the children of England. And the family farms that we know of today, that's a mythos that's not accurate. It's proto-globalization, and it's colonization, it's imperialism, which is what globalization is. So you don't have to be nostalgic about the old dominion to be conservative, established, whatever it is. What the new vibration is a mix of all those things that were good, take the good out of all those things, blend them up, use the computers, use quantum, use AI, use everything, use it all to distill the most simple understanding. And this is what's really confusing to the old postmodern view. The most simple understanding of everything is the truth, logic, the view from nowhere, an unbiased assessment of the facts on the ground. And that is what seems to catalyze real strong reactions. And why the world is so messed up is we have been subject to a regime that is a reaction to the truth. Poured the truth on it, it freaked out. We've been watching it freak out for decades, and that's where our heads are. So understanding that postmodernism drove society insane is super important, because then you think, okay, well, if it's crazy, if everything about it is just nuts, including the central banking system, then what could you do to make it normal? Just take it really rational. Well, it's a bank, it's a currency, it's a money. It's based on the principles and foundational value of the land, which is what a fiat is. And it's the promise of the land in a way. And we just, a little bit of it, we finance something really big. And then we just use that money, because all this money that BlackRock is making and bringing into Canada and all that, it's all make-believe money. It's no realer than money that we could just make up with an algorithm. Like, it's equally fictitious.
Monopoly money. Monopoly money.
Yeah. It's totally made up. It's. I don't know if you know that about money, but it's one real dollar was leveraged to the point of being $1,000. So if you had one real dollar at some level in the game, you could get $1,000 if you had $1. And then that became, well, that's so 10,000. Then basically when it got there, that was kind of 2007, a single financial equation developed by a guy at the University of Waterloo created the subprime mortgage housing crisis finance thing. And then the reliquidation came from the black market after 2007. That money ran out because even though it was trillions of dollars, it just wasn't enough. And by 2012, we ran into another thing. And then by 2015 is when countries like Canada send emissaries to Davos to begin to sell Canadian assets. Would you like to run the bank? Would you like to do this? So they gave BlackRock executive control of the Canada Land Bank. So the Canadian Infrastructure Bank, which is how you build everything at the big money, is under the direction of Larry Fink. And this is an incredible story. Larry Fink's machine called Aladdin, which is an algorithmic, what's a supercomputer. His is not an algorithm, his is a computer. And it determines the policy, but not from the view from nowhere. It determines it from Larry's particular personal political viewpoint. So all policy is directed by his personal bias, implemented using a vast array of computers, and Canadian politicians basically follow BlackRock direction since 2015. That's why it's been so out of whack with the national character. So that's a huge thing I've just said, and challenge every part of it, because there's proof positive of all of it.
I like that. Let's end the episode on that, because I have to run to another podcast.
Yes.
First of all, can you've written a book? Do you want to maybe just show it to the audience and tell them where they can go buy it?
Okay, so the book, I haven't published the book. It's just something that I have I've made, and it has a couple different versions. And just to give you an idea, I have created it, and it does have a structure and everything. But really, if you go to my X space, which is at Falconer Adamson, I think is my name on X. If you go there, pinned to my profile is 25 models of the land bank, and that is it's just the kind of whet your appetite about how mindful infrastructure financing could liberate Canada instead of yoke Canada. And so that kind of ties it into the BlackRock, which is taking care of our infrastructure finance for us. Whereas I argue we should take care of our infrastructure finance for ourselves. Exactly. There you go. So the Canada National Land Bank, a big idea for a better future. And it's just kind of a brochure, as you will.
All right, good stuff. So again, everyone, that's at Falconer Adamson. Go ahead, give him a follow, read his pinned article. And I hope everybody enjoyed the episode. I learned a lot. I'm sorry if my questions were juvenile.
No.
I'm happy you were a patient man. So thank you.
Oh no, it's super. So much thank you, because this is something I've been trying to speak about with so many people, and I don't know if they're intimidated or they think it's just nonsense, or I don't know what people think of this idea. So your questions were great. Thank you so much, and I would love to talk about this and more specific of later at another opportunity if anything ever comes up. So let me know. Thanks for having me.
Sounds good, Michael. Thank you for coming on. Have a nice day, and a big thank you to the audience. Bye.
Yeah, thank you so much for watching. Bye.